Just like any other active wood shop, after I finish a project, I end up with all these cutoffs and odd pieces of wood that might be valuable in the future, so I don't want to just throw them away. I use these scraps for small projects and for doing setups and trial cuts in other projects, but that means I have a lot of wood left to store, and it ends up in boxes all over the shop and is a general nuisance. That's why in this video, I'm going to make this lumber storage cart that I found plans for in issue number 45 of Shopnotes magazine. And if you want your own back issues of Shopnotes and to get the plans, you can still reorder these from the publishers of Woodsmith. I've left a link in the description below where you can do that. The front of the cart is divided into 5 bins. And the top 3 bins have bin dividers that lets me sort wood according to length. And that makes it easier later to find the right length of wood that I need for whatever project I'm working on. The back of the cart is just open, and that lets me store cutoffs of sheet goods like plywood and pegboard. Construction is pretty simple. There's a top, a bottom, a center divider, and front stiles and back stiles. These shelves are housed in dados in the center divider and matching dados in the stiles. Let me give you a close-up of this, and then we'll go outside and start cutting some wood. Here's the center divider, and here's one of the front stiles. You can see the dados in both, and this is what the shelf is housed in. Let me show you a close-up of the front stiles. These outside stiles are full length, top to bottom. The center stile goes from the bottom only to this shelf, and these 2 stiles only span 2 shelves. I've got bin dividers here, here, and here, and you can see where I've got them screwed in. The bottom 2 bins are open side to side. The stiles and the divider start out as the same dimension, 34.5 inches, so this will be my first cut. Because I can't make this cut on the table saw, I'm going to go outside and use the plywood cutting jig I made in my last video. I'm also going to use the technique that minimizes tear out when cross-cutting plywood. I'm not going to cut entirely through the plywood on the first pass. I'm only going to score the top layer of veneer. From this piece, I'll get the divider and the front stiles. And these both will have dados in them, and to make sure they line up, I'm going to leave the 2 together while I cut those dados at the table saw. I've got my dado blade set for a 3/4 inch width, and it's 6 3/4 of an inch from the rip fence. I'll make one pass on this side of the stock, I'll turn the stock around and make a pass on this side. I'll reset the rip fence for 13.5 inches, and I'll make 2 more passes for 2 more dados. The divider is 36 inches wide, so I'll rip 1 foot off this side of this piece. Because all the other pieces are 36 inches wide also, while the saw's set up for that 12-inch cut, I'll go ahead and cut these 2 sides off also. This center divider actually needs to be an inch shorter than the stiles just because of how it fits up into the dados in the top and bottom. But I'm not going to cut 1 inch off of one end. I'm going to cut 1/2 inch off this end and 1/2 inch off this end just to make sure my dados still line up with the ones in the stiles. From this piece, I'll get the stiles for the back, and they're the same 34.5 inches that the front stiles are. So I'll make this crosscut at 34.5, and then I'll rip 2.5 inch strips from this piece and this piece for the stiles. From the rest of this half sheet of plywood, I'll get the top and bottom, and those are both 23.5 inches wide. This cut I'll make at the table saw. From this piece, I'll get the 4 shelves, and they're each 14.25 inches wide. Note that the plans call for these to be 14.5, but that's incorrect. They're 14.25 inches wide. I'm going to make this first cut this in half outside on the plywood cutting jig, and then bring it inside to the table saw for final cuts. I'm spending some time pre-drilling all the holes in the stiles, the center divider, and the top and bottom. Wherever there's a dado, I'm drilling through from the dado side and then flipping the piece over and countersinking from the other side. I'm going to begin assembly by attaching the center divider to the top and the bottom. And to make sure they stay square as I assemble, I've made a pair of these jigs. Plywood with 2 dados cut at 90 degrees to each other. I'm installing the 2 outside stiles on the back. I still want to be able to get into the interior here and put some screws in from this back side. And now I'll start installing the shelves one after another. And now I'm installing the stiles on the front, just the 2 outside ones. I've got the case upside down. I'm going to install the casters now, just to make it easier to move around the shop while I finish working on it. Previously, I'd glued these caster blocks, which are just 1/8 inch masonite, the same size as the mounting flange on the caster, because I was concerned that these number 14 by 7/8 inch panhead sheet metal screws might go through the 3/4 inch plywood. I'm going to install another piece of 3/4 inch plywood on the top as a work surface. It's the same 36 inches long, but it's got to be an inch wider than the top and bottom pieces, so it'll cover up the ends of these stiles. It'd be very difficult to screw from underneath if I hadn't pre-planned and already pre-drilled these holes, and if I didn't have the correct screwdriver. With only 6 inches of clearance between the two shelves, there wouldn't be room for a regular screw gun to get in here, so I'm going to use this angle-headed one. And here I'm going to cut the bin dividers, 3 of those, 6 inches wide, 13 3/4 of an inch long. And here's where the bins go. 1 foot from the left side, 1 foot from the right side on the second bin, and centered on the third bin. The bottom 2 are left open. I'll get everything screwed together and then I'll work on the trim. And this is why I left those last 2 stiles off the back, so I could get to these screws on the bin dividers. And now I can finish putting on these 2 back stiles. Since the top is 1.5 inches thick, I'm going to rip strips of poplar for trim that are 1.5 inches wide. And this piece won't go to waste. I'm going to use it in my next project. I'm going to do my trim strips a little bit differently than they did in the article for this project. I want mine to match what I did with the roll-around shop car I made in another video. So you can see I've got the long strips temporarily clamped along these edges, the long edges. That lets me fit perfectly the trim for the short edges. And that's how I want it to fit. So I'm going to do the trim on the lumber cart the same way I did it on the roll-around shop cart. Butt it onto the short side, overlapping on the long side, and then I'll knock off the corner at 45 degrees. And I'll use this plane to ease the top edges of the trim. And the last step, start loading it up. This might take me a while. Guys, thanks for watching.